Hi all, I just wanted to add a little bit of detail to the lecture today on limiting, how to use a limiter for mastering purposes. I've got this little bass loop here, playing some grime stuff, and I might put some drums in as well, just a loop for demonstration's sake. That one sounds good. I'll play those together. Awesome. We have a fantastic 2-bar loop. Now, you can see that just with these two tracks playing, neither of the individual tracks are going into the red, i.e. distorting, but because there's a combination of the two audio files, it is going to distort here. So if we play it, you can see that there's actually some distortion happening from the combination of these two quite loud samples playing at the same time. So to help with this, we can insert, well actually the first thing we really should do is turn down the volume of the tracks so it's not distorting the master channel. Turn them down to about -6 decibels each. They're both down -6, which means it's not distorting here. What we then want to do for mastering is bring the audio level up to as loud as it can be while maintaining a, I guess, tasteful amount of dynamic range. And we use a limiter to bring up this master audio level without going over the digital maximum of 0 decibels. So if I go down to audio effects and go to limiter, throw that on the master track, it will default to, you see here it says -0.3. Just leave that for the moment. That's to prevent intersample clipping. And you can do a bit more research into what intersample clipping actually is, but it essentially is when a digitally stored waveform is played back through an analog system, the samples that the digital format used to encode the smooth audio waveform may be under the ceiling of -0.3, but when it draws the waveform again, the waveform will actually go through those 2 points and go over them. So if you've got a threshold and the 2 points are here, the line will actually go over, even though the samples, the digital samples, are under. That's intersample clipping. And that's why we allow a little bit, in this case, -0.3 of a decibel of headroom, what we call headroom, or space between the actual maximum and our limiting maximum. Okay. So as I play this, the limiter is currently doing nothing because the gain is at 0. So the audio is playing from these tracks to the master through this limiter with no change to the volume. As I turn up the gain, you start to see gain reductions start to occur here. And at more extreme levels, just turn the overall volume down at the computer so I don't blast myself. At extreme levels, this is very extreme limiting, too much. But you can hear that it makes the overall perceived volume of the sound louder, even though our ceiling, our maximum volume, has stayed the same, stayed at 0. So it's bringing up the average volume underneath that fixed threshold, that fixed ceiling amount. How much is a good amount of limiting in mastering? Generally, less is more, is the mastering, the way mastering engineers think about it. Though what we're trying to do is match the average volume level to a commercial mix in the genre. It's very genre specific. More aggressive sort of genres may have a average volume of -6, maybe even higher. The more sort of classical music and jazz, which has a very large dynamic range, may have an average of -18. And it still has that top ceiling. So if the average is up here, you can see how much room you've got to move in terms of dynamic range. Whereas if your average is down here, you've got big differences between the soft parts of the song and the loud parts of the song. So what we're doing, we're turning up that average. And that's basically how you use it. You just turn up the gain, and it just won't clip the master. Even at maximum, it won't clip. But it sounds sort of distorted and picked up. There's a few other controls. The look ahead controls how long it looks ahead for the next sample before applying the gain reduction. It makes it react a bit quicker. It can reduce distortion if it is happening. And a shorter look ahead can make it more, keeps the transients more harsh, I guess. It lets more of the transients through. So you've got more chance of clipping. But, I think lower look ahead is good for aggressive sort of music and higher look ahead good for smoother sort of music. It's kind of like a combo of the attack and release of a compressor. Cool. All right, that's about all I wanted to show you on that. Don't worry about leave release on auto. It's fine. Yeah, that's the Ableton limiter. I think the Logic one's pretty much the same deal. I haven't used it so much. Cool. So in Logic, if I go in your audio, go to my loop browser, I'm just going to go, that one is fine. Nice and quick. I'll just make a loop there. Sweet. All right. Now in Logic, this is your track, this is your master track. So I'm going to go in Audio Effects. I think it's in Dynamics Limiter. Don't worry about the adaptive one yet. You can read about what that is, but for just basic limiting theory, this is sufficient. Now it's on my master. My track is not distorting when the limiter is off to the master. That's important. If it was, I should bring down the track volume before applying the limiting. Don't apply limiting to this because the audio is distorted going into the limiter. You don't want to distort it into the limiter. You want it to be a good level going into the limiter. So bring that down, reset these. All right, just touching into the yellow, bring it down a little bit further, is good. Turn on the Logic limiter. Just with Ableton, it's not doing anything. It sets its output level at 0. Now we want to set that down a bit, as I said. Either minus 0.2 or minus 0.3. It's usually around where mastering engineers tend to do. I'm going to go minus 0.2. And then we've got our gain control, just like Ableton's. Turn this up. We see the gain reduction happening here. So input level, and we see our output level is always hitting the ceiling of minus 0.2, but not actually distorting. Perfect. Our limiter's working properly. We also have look-ahead controls, which change the subtle character of it, of the limiter, and release control as well, very similar to Ableton's one. Shorter releases are good for more aggressive music. It maintains more of the transients, and good for faster tempo music too. Whereas if you want to smooth out, if the limiter is sounding too obvious, by increasing the release, you smooth the effect of the limiter. It's not so instantly reactive. It reacts, and then it takes a while to release the gain reduction. If there's another peak, it will actually end up being smoother, rather than, that's my visual. Anyway, that's essentially the idea. So please, on your mixes, put a limiter at the very end. Don't over limit, don't go ridiculous. If you want to know how much to limit, the best idea is to listen to a commercial recording and just compare the loudness, the perceived loudness. Every digital audio file that's correctly recorded will be under 0 dB because it won't be digitally clipped. However, the average will be different depending on genre and style and all that sort of thing. So how much limiting, how high you bring that average under the ceiling is really genre specific. So use benchmarks when using limiters to try to find out how loud it should be. Also realize too, as people who don't have professional mastering studios, it's very unlikely that you'll get your track as loud, as perceived loud, the average volume, as a commercial release, because commercial mastering studios have a lot more hardware and tools to really get the volume up as high as it can without distortion. With our digital tools, they're good, but you generally can't quite get the same loudness before distortion starts to happen. So, use the commercial mixes as benchmarks, but appreciate that you may not be able to get them quite as loud. It's more important to preserve audio fidelity, the quality of the sound, and not distort things inadvertently, than to have your mix half a decibel louder than it was. Primary importance though is to never have digital clipping. So really have a look at those master channels anytime you're using audio software, and make sure you're not doing this crazy sort of stuff. Keep your main fader on 0 and keep your limiter ceiling just under 0. And you're good to go. Thanks.